Okay, folks. Well, hello there. It's nice to be here with all of you, and we really appreciate you having us. And hopefully this won't be the last time we come and see you. We'd like to get out at least once a year and visit as many civic organizations as we can, just to keep folks informed on what's going on at the utilities. Some of y'all, if you've been reading the paper or following social media, you've seen that we're pursuing a rate increase through City Council right now. And that's been in the news. It's been a hot topic, and we want to take that head on and let you know what that's all about and what it looks like. So we're going to talk about, you can see this opening slide here. There's three key topics today. One is growth, one is capital, and the other, finally, is rates, how it all ends up in a rate plan. Okay, so here is the overview slide. So the key topics, again, growth, then we'll talk about capital. Capital is broken down into our three lines of business there. So water, sewer, electricity. Then we'll hit on water supply, and then we'll get into operating expenses. So we'll go from capital to operating expenses and then revenue requirements, which then ultimately leads to rates. This is something I probably don't need to talk to y'all about. We're growing a lot. We've, the last 3 out of 4 years, been the second fastest growing city in the nation, and according to the U.S. Census, as of this year, dating back to 2010, we're the third fastest growing. So that impacts everybody in a different way. At NBU, there's three key things that it has done. The first is it's rapidly consumed capacity in our infrastructure. It's actually done it at twice the rate. So if you've got a water pipe or something of that nature, a water plant, it's being consumed at twice the rate it normally does. It's strained our workforce, and of course, it's changed our customer expectations. So let's talk about capital, that whole infrastructure piece. This is a look at how, within our budget over the last 10 years, how our expenditures broke down between capital and O&M. So you can see 10 years ago, we were almost 50-50 between O&M and capital. And with the growth and the infrastructure needs that came with that, this is now an 80%, 20% split. So the majority of what we do in the way of a budget is capital. And so that's why I want to spend most of the presentation showing you where those investments are going and why. So this shows, as the title communicates, what we've made in the way of capital expenditures or investments looking back 10 years and what we project looking ahead 10 years. And you can see that in normal years, we used to make about $75 million in investments over 5 years across all three lines of business. We're now at a point where we are over $500 million in capital investments. And you can see the colors of those bars relate to the line of business. Orange is electric, blue is water, green is wastewater. Those are the two most capital intensive of the utilities. Then gray is support services, and yellow is equipment. So you can see the tallest bar right there is this year, and we are delighted by that. We've been getting to this point, and we are ready to get through this capital program. You can see the next 3 years are really the final years of this big growth in capital that we're needing to make investments in, and then we level out to a more normal amount. So we'll talk about electric first. We'll go electric, then water, then wastewater. When you look at electric systems, probably one of the things that people think of most is how is it performing is reliability. So this is a measure of the reliability of NBU's electric system compared to other sectors and also the nation. This is a metric called SAIDI. It's basically, it's an average outage duration. It's kind of a thing that engineers use. This data comes from the federal government. They track this kind of information. So the lower the number means the lower outage minutes. So lower is better. And then the calendar years are across the bottom. The blue bar is NBU. The next one over is the average of Texas municipally owned utilities. The next one over is the average of Texas electric cooperatives. The yellow one is the average of Texas investor-owned utilities, the for-profit corporations. And then the red bar, the final one on the right, is the average of all electric utilities in the United States. So you can see that after decades of good governance and management at NBU, it way predates me. We've been able to build these reliability numbers, which is something we're real happy about, real proud of. Electric systems in very good shape. Uh-oh, there we go. Now it's moving. So if you look at the capital plan for electric, I mentioned 80% of the budget is capital. This is the electric portion of capital. It's about $88 million, and most of it is going to growth and development. Of course, every line of business, you're going to see investments in aging infrastructure. We cannot get behind that. If you look at the dams, like Dunlap and McQueenie and such, that's what happens when you get behind these investments, and that's not something that we're going to do because you end up paying for it eventually. You just pay more down the road. Okay, we'll talk about water next. Water infrastructure. When you don't have enough capacity in your water or wastewater system, you at some point are no longer in compliance with regulations. Those regulations in Texas are Texas Commission on Environmental Quality Regulations, or TCEQ. TCEQ has in Texas what's called primacy for implementing EPA laws, basically. So these are essentially, are we in compliance with TCEQ and or EPA? You can see prior to this month, if you're to categorize our water system into 3 different categories: elevated storage, that's water towers; distribution, pumping; and then production, those are treatment plants and wells and that type of thing. We were out of compliance across the entire system. We did not have enough capacity to meet the demand because growth happens so fast, you simply cannot build water and wastewater fast enough to keep up with 7% growth rate. It's just not, it's not possible. These are heavy civil projects and they take time to plan, design, and construct. Because of the work we've been doing the last 3 to 4 years, as of this month, we are now in compliance for 2 out of the 3 areas of infrastructure. Elevated storage, those are in motion. We will be in compliance. I want to point out that for pumping and production, those are temporary compliance allowances that TCEQ has allowed. We've negotiated with them. We went to them first and said, we have a compliance issue. We want to make you aware of it, and here's our plan to rectify it. It is in motion. So let's talk about this. So we gave them a plan, and it involves coming up with what's called alternative capacities, which allows us to lower the bar a bit and so that we can build it back, that capacity back into it and meet the actual capacities required. We went back and forth on negotiations. They've allowed that. So when we say we're in compliance on pumping and production, it's a temporary compliance, given that we will continue to build out the pumping and production facilities that we've committed to. Elevated storage, like I said, that is in flight right now. But when you talk about compliance, y'all know this. Compliance means you don't have a choice. You must do these things. And if you don't do it, you're going to have to do it anyway, and they're going to fine you. So, or you're going to run out of water, right? And that's what will happen on the water system. So let's talk about that a little bit. There's so many different graphics and tables and charts that communicates the condition of our water system. And picking one is hard, but this is the one I picked. So the bars along the bottom, the blue bars, are maximum day demand of our water system. So you design your water system, your pumps, your pipes, and your storage to meet that maximum day because you have to be able to deliver so you don't run out of water. And for NBU, for most utilities, for pretty much all in Texas, the maximum day is in the summer when most people are watering the highest volume. All of this infrastructure is for lawn watering. If there was no irrigation, if you look at the total water used over the course of a year, roughly half of that is for irrigation. So we've got to design the system to handle the peak lawn watering hours during the day. So you can see starting in 2019, the blue bar was touching that black dotted bar, line. That black dotted line was our existing capacity in 2019. And when I say capacity, I mean no main breaks, no pumps out of service, no failures, nothing. And that's just not a reality. So we came close to not being able to keep up with demand for the last 3 summers, 2018 and 2019 and 2020. There's another chart that I don't have here, but what it shows is, the way a water system works is you want your pumps to be able to keep up with the maximum day. But there's going to be a peak hour or 2 hours there where the pumps simply can't keep up, but that's what the water towers are for. Well, we've had days over the last 3 to 4 summers where the water towers, each day, their total storage volume is declining. We're literally mining the storage because the pumps cannot keep up running 24/7. It's been that kind of capacity issues that we've been facing. So you can see those red labels we have with the green check marks. Those are interim projects and other types of projects that we are building every single year, every single off season. So when summer comes, we have increased the pumping capacity. We're squeezing every drop from the lemon that we can get out of our current system. And that's what those projects are. We're working with Green Valley and the city of Seguin and other neighboring utilities to build interim interconnects with these folks so that we have additional water coming into critical parts of the system. So when the peak lawn watering happens in those early morning hours, we're not draining our water towers. Because you drain your water towers and you drop below 20 PSI, you end up with a boil water notice across your system. And that is not what we want to have happen. You can see in 2023, That's when the big increase in capacity happens. That's when our big projects come online that are taking years to plan and design and construct. So in 2023, that lines up with that capital investment profile that I showed you as well. That's going to be an important year for us. So the water capital plan, you'll remember electric was about 88 million. Water is just under 200 million. You can see it's broken down that pie chart. Most of it is compliance. That means building the capacity. We have aging infrastructure investments, of course, and then growth and development. I want to point out that that red part that's compliance, if growth dropped to zero, which, by the way, our year-to-date growth at NBU is higher than last year. What pandemic, right? You'll know that the pandemic is affecting some sectors badly and some positively. Well, in our community, I'm sure you all are seeing this as realtors, things are picking up in New Braunfels. My point being, if our growth dropped to zero, 55% of that would still have to be built just to catch up with the growth we've had over the last 10 years. All right, this is wastewater. Let's talk about this next. Again, prior to this month, we were out of compliance on all three of those categories. A lift station is basically a sewer pump station. You want sewage to go downhill as much as you can, but at some point you got to pump it back uphill and get it going by gravity again. And then we have wastewater treatment plants and then wastewater pipelines. As of this month, I am delighted to say that we are in compliance on wastewater treatment. This isn't temporary. This is in compliance, and it's because we completed the green water reclamation facility that y'all see on the loop at the Guadalupe River. Very excited about that. We're demolishing the old plant right now. We were under an administrative order from TCEQ to get that built, so that's nice to have that taken away, and we're in good shape right there. And all these other projects, again, like everything else, are in flight to get us back into compliance. The pipeline project that is most significant here runs along a long stretch of the Guadalupe River. It runs along the Comal River and the dry Comal. And that pipeline is over capacity, meaning with the right rain event, raw sewage flows out of that pipe and into the river. That's the kind of impact we're talking about for not building these projects. The old green wastewater plant, it was under administrative order because it was over capacity, meaning it couldn't consistently treat the water to the standard in the permit given by TCEQ, meaning it will affect water quality on those days when it's overloaded. That's the kind of impact of not building these projects. Water, it's kind of easy to conceptualize. You turn on the tap and nothing comes out, and you can boil water dose until things catch up. Sewer, we're talking about environmental impacts to the river and ultimately public health, because we pull water out of the river to drink. So does Seguin and everybody else downstream. So here's the wastewater capital plan. Again, electric was about 88, water was about this amount, just under $200 million. And you can see the breakdown there between compliance, aging infrastructure, growth, and some others. So because water and wastewater is driving the majority of our capital plan, which is the majority of our budget, we wanted to bring a third party in, look at everything we're doing from an unbiased perspective and say, tell us what we're doing wrong if we are, tell us how we can do it better, cheaper, more efficient. They reviewed everything we were doing, and as of May, they gave us a technical memo confirming our work. So we felt pretty good about that, and we're going to continue to do that. We're rerunning our master plans every year because the capacity is so tight right now to make sure that we are doing the right projects at the right time. Okay, water supply. The reason, so water infrastructure, that's the stuff in the ground. That's pipes, pumps, tanks, treatment plants. Water supply is the actual access to the water. So the infrastructure brings the water to the business or the home. So let's talk about water supply next. This is our water supply portfolio as it currently stands. And the reason some of those areas within the pie chart are shaded is because we don't have enough infrastructure to bring that water to the tap. And that's part of what these capital projects are designed to alleviate. So we have contracted 50,000 acre feet of water, but we can only bring 23,000 acre feet of that water into the system because we simply don't have the infrastructure to do it right now. But I'll tell you that, let me see if we get this other slide. Yeah, I don't. If you see the amount of the value of the water there, the cost of it, the highest cost water we have is around $1,500. Our portfolio is one of the lowest cost portfolios in the region, and it dates back to about 30 years ago when NBU first made investments in surface water, and that has carried us to today. So we have one of the lowest cost portfolios in the region, and we're very excited about that. People often ask, why did you not buy into the Saws Vista Ridge project? That water is about $2,000 per acre foot. People ask, why aren't you treating your wastewater and irrigating parks with that? That's about $3,700 per acre foot. So when we're continuously evaluating all water supply projects available to us, including conservation, and that's all in our water resources plan, and this is an output of it. But even with that planning, water is getting very expensive these days in our region with growth, and because of the fact that, like water planners like to say, all the cheap water is gone. And what that means is, in the old days, 20, 30 years ago, you just drilled a well and you pumped it out, and you didn't have to build significant pipeline infrastructure or treatment infrastructure to bring it to your community. But all that water is spoken for. All of it's been permitted, and so to bring more water into your community means building projects outside your community, typically outside your county, and building infrastructure to bring it in, and that's what's driving water supply costs. So this is not just a New Braunfels Utilities or New Braunfels scenario. This is region-wide. Water is just getting much more expensive. Okay, operating expenses. So let's go back to this. I just got through talking about 80% of our budget. Now I'm going to talk about 20%, which is has a much smaller effect on what we're doing and revenue requirements and rates. There's a lot of information on here. Given I'm trying to explain it, I'm going to cut to the chase. So I mentioned early on, one of the things that growth has done to NBU is it's strained our workforce. So we feel it, we know it, but what we wanted to do is put a benchmark together and ask other utilities. What you're seeing here is an evaluation of meters per employee compared to other utilities. And because we have water, sewer, and electricity, and some utilities have all three, some have one, some have two, we tried to do an overall evaluation. And what we found was, in general, the electric side of the business is pretty well staffed. It's pretty well where it needs to be. But on water and wastewater, those two lines of businesses are roughly 40% understaffed right now. And that's how lean we are running right now in that line of business. And that's the line of business that's implementing all this capital that we have in flight right now. And we can't simply add all those employees in 1 year or 2 years or 5 years because the rates simply can't handle it. So we've been adding a small number each year to try to build up that workforce, being very mindful of what we can and can't do to not burn out our employees. And that's the biggest part of our O&M budget. Okay, so let's talk about revenue requirements. That's the cost of doing business that I just showed you, capital and O&M. Let's talk about revenue requirements. We are a nonprofit organization. We are municipally owned. So we have no profit built into our rates. We're not looking for a bottom line when we're putting our rate together. What we're looking for is a particular bond rating. That's what this is all about. And the reason we're driving for a bond rating, you can see there's two things there on the screen. First, it drives the cost of debt. It's purely because it dictates the interest rate we pay for our bonds, which is how we're funding a large portion of the capital. But then you can see, too, I think most people don't understand this, the cost of energy. We buy energy in the deregulated Texas energy market, the ERCOT market. It's one of the most envied ERCOT energy markets in the world, actually. And so we have a forward trading program, forward hedging program that the rating agencies have recognized as a very advanced and sophisticated program. And because it's that way, that is one of the things that drives the low utility bills in New Braunfels. So the cost of energy is roughly 76% of an electric bill. And this power supply program is the majority of that bill. And our bond rating is what makes us a qualified counterparty in that trading program. So the point being, if the bond rating goes down, the cost of energy goes up and the cost of debt goes up. So the overall monthly NBU bill goes up. So the purpose of designing a rate is to achieve a certain bond rating to keep the utility bills low. That's what we're driving for when we're talking about revenue requirements or rates. So the way we achieve that bond rating is those three ratios that you see there on the bottom. We have our own, the NBU Board of Trustees has their own financial policy that we must remain in compliance with, and we do that by meeting those ratios, and that's what allows us to achieve that bond rating. So I mentioned the need to be in compliance with TCEQ regulations. We must also be in compliance with our own policy. So what is our bond rating? This is a comparison of bond ratings for utilities like us within the state of Texas. And you can see that NBU is up there in the AA category. And the only utility higher than us is CPS Energy in San Antonio. And they are the largest municipal energy company in the country. I don't know that we'd ever get up there to AA plus because we just don't have those kind of revenues. But you can see we're right there with Austin Energy. And then you get down to AA minus, A plus, and A. We are in a very good spot, which makes the utility bills as low as they are in our community. We don't want to lose that. So let's talk about revenue requirements. So it starts with the bond rating. That's why I wanted to talk so much about that. That's the goal. We want to achieve that bond rating by hitting those ratios. We take the cost of service, which is everything I just went through, the capital and the O&M. There's no profit built in. It's a straight pass-through to our customers. We make sure we have the appropriate reserves so we can weather things like COVID and retain liquidity and those kinds of things. We do everything we can to cut costs and bring in new revenue sources. We are looking under every couch cushion in every department of the company to try to find opportunities to cut and bring in revenue that's not rates. And in the 5-year plan that we have now, we've pulled $13.6 million out, and we've added $5 million in new revenue that wasn't there before that is not rates. Then the last place we look, if the revenue requirements aren't met to achieve the bond rating, is rates, and that's where we are right now. So let's talk about rates and how everything's funded. I mentioned capital is such a big part of the budget. Well, this is how it's funded. You can see that revenue is about 16%. Taking on new debt is about 57%. And that's not a bad thing, y'all, because we're talking about 30-year bonds. And if you're building a sewer plant that lasts, it's going to have capacity, it's going to last on the order of decades, that's a good thing because you want the cost of that spread out to those customers that's being built for that haven't yet moved here but will move here eventually. You can see impact fees there on the pie chart. I'll point out, I don't know if I have a slide for that. Let me see. I do. Okay, I'll talk about it in just a second. Impact fees and the contributions and aid construction and other grants make up the rest of it. So let's talk about impact fees. A lot of people say, why not make growth pay for growth? It comes up a lot, especially on social media. And the answer to that question is we are maximizing the avenues available to us by state law to transfer the cost of growth to those driving the growth. So what I'm trying to say there is impact fees are the way we assess the cost of growth to the developer, actually to the builder, for water and wastewater. There's no mechanism for electric. But by state statute, there is one for water. It's the impact fee. But it does not, the statute does not allow the utility to recover the full cost of the project. That's just the way it was written. We can only recover the first 10 years of capacity, and these projects are much longer than 10-year projects. So what this chart is showing is that, for example, on the water side of the business, the total project costs are $280 million, but we can only put $200 million of that in the impact fees. On wastewater, total project costs are $182 million. We can only put $78 million of that in the impact fee. And we have maximized the impact fee calculation by statute. So we have leveraged that as best we can. I'll tell you this too, our rates, and you'll see here at the end, are some of the lowest in the region. Our impact fees are some of the highest. And that's not something that we're proud of. It's just something that's a fact of how we're managing the business. And if you talk to builders and developers, they are very aware of that. So let's get into rates. We'll do water, then sewer, then electricity, and that'll round out the presentation here. Am I doing okay on time?
You're fantastic. We're at your leisure, sir.
Okay, here are the goals and the strategies that we had going into the rate design that we've just presented in the City Council. Number one is to protect the essential use only water customers. That's an important concept there. When it comes to water, there's two types of water use. There's essential use, that's bathing, drinking, preparing food, washing your clothes, that kind of thing. Then there's irrigation, which is discretionary. And so what we wanted to do with the water rate was protect the essential use volumes and be very light on any change to that. And you'll see that in the first year, those are actually going down in cost. And then transfer the cost to irrigation volumes because that's what's driving the need for the infrastructure is the irrigation. So when it comes to designing rates when you're a utility, it's called cost of service. You put the cost for what's driving the service. And on the water side of the business, it's irrigation, it's lawn water. So you'll see that in just a moment. The second item here is we wanted to put in place, and we have proposed a discount program for low-income customers. Again, we recognize that the services we provide, water, sewer, and electricity, are essential services. You don't get to choose. It's not like a cell phone. You have to have these things. And so we're very sensitive to that, and so we have this program that we're proposing. The third item there, the Fitch Rating Agency has a criterion they use, which we're very excited about, because we want to remain affordable while at the same time recover our costs. It's this balance that you have to achieve when you design a rate. So they have a criterion for it, and we've met and they have different levels for it, and so we have met it at their highest rating for being affordable and recovering costs. So there's a national benchmark we feel good about. I just talked about allocating costs to the classes driving the need for those investments. That's irrigation. That's why we have a water supply fee and on-peak, off-peak pricing. We need to get NBU back to regulatory compliance. We have to. We cannot take on fees or fines, and that's what these projects will do. We need to keep our bills low by protecting that bond rating. And then finally, what we've proposed to council is a 3-year rate plan. You'll remember that capital chart that showed the next 3 years being the highest for our capital program. What rating agencies are looking for is revenue assurance. Because if you have revenue assurance, then it makes their job a lot easier in rating you. And that's why we're proposing a 3-year plan. We know what the projects are. We know what we need to do. Let's get this out of the way, put the whole plan together. Everybody sees what it's going to look like, and then go forward. So that's what we propose. Okay. Before I get into rates, I want to talk a little bit about water use, because this has been a topic on social media. It's been on my neighborhood's social media group, On the Hill group. A lot of angry folks on there about their water bills, their electric bills this summer. Before I get into rates and bills, it's important to understand volumes, because it's hard. Is 1,000 gallons a lot? Is 10,000 a lot? What is a lot of water, right? Who knows? Because who looks at their utility bill? And I do, because I work there, but I never did before I worked at a utility. So these blocks are the blocks that our billing system has. So 0 to 7,500 gallons is a certain rate. 7,501 to 15,000 is a higher rate, and it goes up to the higher block that you use. Within those blocks, you can see the percent of customers that use that amount of water. So you can see on peak, that's the summer months, just over half of customers were not irrigating at all. But I think what's important for going forward on these slides is to recognize that only 95% of our customers use 25,000 gallons or less. 95%. So when we're talking about volumes higher than 25,000 gallons, it's only 5% of our customers during the summer, and that's going to be important as we go forward here. We had we started in August when social media really got active with people upset about their bills. We started reaching out to folks who were most angry and saying, can we help? What can we do to help? People reached out to us and asked us that question. My bill is high. What can I do? What you see here are customers A through G. Customer information is confidential, so that's why there's no names. That's why there's letters. But what I want to point out is these are the folks who contacted us because their bills were high. One of the things that was driving the bills, one of the biggest things, was the total amount of water they used. So if you look at the first customer, let me scroll down because you can't see the bottom. By way of comparison, an average residential swimming pool is about 20,000 gallons, and essential use water is about 6,000 gallons. Those are rough numbers. So you can see that this person on the top was using the equivalent of 5 swimming pools worth of water per month. So when you hear on Facebook or other places that their bill was between $800 to $1,200, that's because they put about 100,000 gallons on. Some people were putting, you can see, some of these folks had close to 150,000 gallons per month in individual months. And it's hard to know that. I mean, if you don't have an awareness of what's going on with your sprinkler, you just see the grass getting a certain color, and you just go increase your time, your zone times, but you don't know what that means in volume. That's how this kind of thing happens. So if you look at most of these folks, I mean, most of them are, this is about 5% of the customer base, most of these with the very high bills. So what we're doing in response to that, we are not happy that people are not happy. I mean, we do the work we do because we want to serve. We're public servants. This is not something we're happy about. We want to help folks and fix this. So there's a lot of words, and they're really small because this is important. What we're putting together, what we've already launched, and we're going to grow and really make robust by March is what we're calling a comprehensive utility bill management plan. So we're going to roll out in March, and with a specific focus on high-use customers. We're going to look at volumes and go out to them and say, hey, look, this was your volumes, these were your bills. Can we help? Do you want help? And if so, here's some things we can do. We can come out and do energy and water use assessments at no cost. We'll come nights and weekends on their home. We'll do a deep dive bill analysis, which is very helpful for folks who have questions. Look at every single line item in the bill and see what's driving the cost. We can go and take a look at their irrigation timer, and we can help them program it. We can run each zone, see what the gallons per minute is. And if they want to achieve a certain gallons in the course of the month, we can help them program the timer to achieve a certain gallons, to achieve a certain dollar amount. We can do that for them. We can program, we have smart meters, so if they'd like for us to help them program a notification, so when they've reached a specific volume in the month, they get a notification so they can dial back on whatever it is, their thermostat or their irrigation timer, on and on and on. There's a lot of things we can do. I won't get into all this because time's limited, but I want to point out this is very important to us, and this is an all-hands-on-deck initiative that we're building to roll out in the spring to help people come next summer. So let's talk about water. This is where we're going to land the plane here. We're going to get into water bill comparisons and then sewer and electrical very quick. What you're seeing here is a water bill comparison for NBU compared to, let me lower this a little bit, for NBU compared to neighboring utilities. And by the way, this is in no way intended to portray any of these utilities in a negative light. These are all of our friends. We work closely with them. What this is an indication of, for those that are nonprofit, there's only one for-profit on there, that's Canyon Lake. The rest of us are all nonprofit. It's a statement of what the needs are for that particular community or that utility. So you can see NBU currently has the lowest utility bill. This is 6,000 gallons. This is only water. This is essential use. This is non-irrigation. So the current is kind of the pinkish color. It's kind of hard to tell. That amount, based on our rate design, is actually going to drop next year because we're removing the water supply fee from that lowest block. Again, we're trying to protect that fixed income customer. And then if they take advantage of the low income program, it's going to drop even more. But if you look at our bill for essential use, it's about $24.50. And you can see how it goes up. If you're somewhere like Cibolo, it's $57, Springs Hill $66, Crystal Clear $72, Canyon Lake $77. So again, we feel like this is an incredible value. And as realtors, you all aren't just selling properties, you're selling a community. And so in my view, the infrastructure in a community and the cost of that is so important to painting the total value picture for a community. And so what I hope you'll see in these slides is that what we're delivering here, yes, we have a lot of needs, but overall, where this bill ranks within our region is very favorable. This is the next volume. So this is a residential water bill comparison for 25,000 gallons. This is 95% of our customers use this amount or less. We're going from a current, if the rate plan is approved, we're going from a current peak of 128 this year to 147 next year. And you can see how far below, the average is 192. In Austin, that would be 294. San Antonio would be 245. Now, we used to stop at 40,000 gallons. That's where we stopped our comparisons. So this is what, I'll tell you why we did more in a second. If you're using 40,000 gallons, which is a lot of water, on peak, the bill is going to go from 276 to 315. If you're in Austin, it's $510. If you're in San Antonio, it's $476. So we're below average and well below many of our neighboring utilities here. Because so many folks were so angry this summer and they had such high volumes, we created these new volume categories, which we've never done slides before. We never had to, but the complaints were so high that we put these together. So if you use 75,000 gallons, this is what your bill is going to go to. It's going to go from $621 to $709. If you're $100, San Antonio and all $100. Yes, compared to the region, it's still very low. 100,000 gallons. This is 5 swimming pools. If you fill your pool 5 times, it's $868 in New Braunfels this year. It's going to go to $990. In Buda, $1,600. San Antonio is $1,400. Austin is $1,300. So very, very low compared to some of these others. 150,000 gallons. Again, it's going to go in New Braunfels from $1,300 to $1,500. It's going to be $3,000 in Garden Ridge, $2,100 in San Antonio, and $2,000 in Austin. So yes, the bills are going up because it's this high usage that's driving the increase in cost to NBU. But relative to the other utilities who are experiencing the same growth in the same region, it's very low. It's below average on all of them. For commercial customers, I think we're the lowest pretty much on all of these. I'll show them to you. This is 54% of commercial customers. They use 55,000 gallons or less. They're the lowest. They're going to stay the lowest. 50,000 gallons. This is about a third of commercial customers. We're the lowest. We're going to stay the lowest. And that's it for water. So let's get into sewer. This won't take nearly as long because it's not nearly. There's not a lot of discretion in sewer. You're not trying to decide how much sewer to discharge each month, right? Like you're watering your lawn. So the sewer rate design is very pure. It's very straightforward. There aren't increasing costs per volume block. This is what it is. For the 3-year plan, it's 16.5%, followed by 13, followed by 13. There are these fees that are specific to commercial customers, and it's related to this thing called chemical oxygen demand, COD, and total suspended solid, TSS. These are basically a measure of the strength of the wastewater. And that's also, it's a surrogate or another measure for how much cost it takes to the treatment plant to treat that water. So commercial has the COD, TSS piece to it, and we're updating those fees to match the updated cost because prices of chemicals go up, prices of running a treatment plant go up, and so we change those fees to make it in alignment. So an average residential sewer bill is 4,600 gallons, and this does not look like water. We are not the lowest. So right now we are at $38, and that is going to $44. We're not even below average on this. But what I want to show you at the end, if you combine water, sewer, and electricity, what the total NBU bill is compared to our neighbors. Electric. So the electric rate has 5 different components. The total bill is that orange thing on the right. This is for 1,200 kilowatt hours. This is average residential. You can see that the components of that bill from left to right are generation, transmission, delivery, PCRF, and customer. Generation and most of that PCRF comes directly from that hedging program that we run that I shared with you earlier. That is one of the reasons we get the low rates that we do. That is a complete pass-through. It's literally a community service that we're providing. We could stop doing that tomorrow and let someone take it over. We do it as a community service because it's such low cost. The only pieces that are going to be affected by this rate increase are what's called delivery and the customer charge. That's essentially maintaining the wires, maintaining reliability to homes and businesses. So there's nothing planned for this coming year, 2021. In the following year, in 22, we're looking at a 5% and then a 10%, but that's on those specific components. The overall impact of the electric bill is 1.3% and 2.6%. So what does that look like? Let me show you in dollars. The average residential electric bill is going to go from 118 to 120 2 years from now. Not now, but next year. So it's going to go to 120. So let me show you. Oh, I don't have those other tables in here. I'm sorry. In the interest of time, I took them out. But that's what it's going to look like. So in 2022, it's going to go up to that amount, and then in the following year, I believe the increase is not as much as that. So still very low on electric. So let's look at a total residential bill. So this fictitious customer here, is the average electric usage, 1,200 kilowatt hours, average sewer usage, 4,600 gallons, and essential use water, so 6,000 gallons. This is no lawn water. And I'm sorry, let me see if I can move this out of the way here so you can see that's a little bit better. There's a lot of numbers up there. We're showing NBU's off-peak and our peak currently. If you take advantage of the low-income program, this is where you'll end up. If you're on peak and off-peak, this is where we're going to end up. But we're still the only city lower than us is San Marcos. The others are higher. So even with over $500 million in infrastructure investments, we're still one of the lowest bills in the entire region. And we're still only looking at a 3.4% bill increase for the average customer, no irrigation. So let's look at some higher water volumes because the bulk of these rate increases are going to water. So let's look at that. Same electric, same sewer, this is average. Now we're talking about 25,000 gallons of water. This is 95% of our customers use this amount or less. You can see that off-peak, we are absolutely the lowest bill in the region. Once we hit peak, only Seguin is less than us, and they're less by $9. So if you're watering at 25,000 gallons, your bill in New Braunfels is $310. San Antonio is $393. Austin is $453. So we think that's a really good value. We go up to 40,000 gallons. This is a lot of water. The only utility, the only city lower than us is Seguin. So on peak, we're looking at $479. San Antonio, that'd be $624. Austin, that'd be $669. So yes, bills are getting higher, and there is no doubt about that. And people are seeing it, people are feeling it. But what I want to emphasize is that the issues that NBU is feeling because of growth is not just a New Braunfels thing, it's an entire region thing. All of us are. All of these utilities along the I-35 corridor between Austin and San Antonio are going through the same thing. And NBU is making out in such a way that our bills are still among the lowest, even with these investments. All right, in the interest of time, I won't read all this to you. This is everything I've already said to you, so you don't need to talk. I'm sure you're tired of me talking anyway. So anyway, that is the end of my presentation. At this point, anybody who's on this thing or in the room, if y'all have questions, I'd be glad to visit with you about it.
Well, I'll go ahead and start off first. I know y'all can't see me on camera, but I'm still here in the room. You had mentioned y'all are actually in the process. You're expanding. You're creating jobs. Do you happen to know roughly what the average salary of those jobs would be, or can you divulge that?
I actually have no idea. You're talking about the positions that are open right now?
Yeah, and as you keep filling to make up for where you're understaffed at the current moment.
Yeah, I really don't know. It is up and down the organization, from frontline employee to the management team.
It'd be fair to say they're good paying jobs though, yeah?
Well, they're municipal jobs. So I wouldn't say good paying. I'd say that they're at market for a municipal job.
Right, and that's, yeah, I got you. And what I'm getting at is, basically, from what I've heard mostly from out in the community, and I'm sure you've heard it too, a lot of the solutions that seem to get thrown out by the general public is, oh, we just need to stop growing. We need to stop developments and stop growing. The problem I see us incurring there is we're already at a housing shortage. We're only running in this area about 2.4 months worth of inventory. We've seen the numbers that have come out over the past few months, like you were saying with the pandemic. And stopping any and all development would put us into even more of a supply crunch, and therefore potentially increasing the price of housing as it is. Is there a specific type product that you think, either more of a high density model or a lower square footage model, something like that you think would help, that we can help affect change with?
Oh man, yes, yeah. Thank you for asking. First of all, to the controlling growth, that's just something we don't have control over. We can't get in and change property rights, because that's really the question at the heart of what's that sentiment. All we can do is try to manage it the best we can, and our mission requires us to deliver these services regardless of population. That's our mission. So then it takes us to what you just said, which is a great point. How do we manage growth in the best way so that when we're all gone, we've allowed this development to happen in a way that's best for the community? And in our mind, when it relates to our business and the natural resources that we're stewards of, it's to make these as conservation friendly and intensive as possible. So on the water side of the business, for example, there are properties outside of our water territory that want our service because water's hard to come by. And if they're adjacent to us, we can serve. We've purposely not extended our territory boundary, because if they're outside of our boundary, we are allowed to serve by contract. And that means we can leverage those conservation requirements in that development. So we can say, we will serve, but here's your cost. We're charging you the cost of water for each individual meter, but you can ramp down that cost by putting in these conservation measures per home, per business, per lot, whatever they are. That's the key, I think. We've been working with regional partners too that have roles similar to us in trying to look at, are there low density building requirements that we can put in place? Are there things we can do at a watershed level to really better manage the whole water resource, instead of doing it in our silos, to maximize that resource and also protect the natural environment that we're here, that we love? That's why we came here, many of us, right?
That's it. And I think it's hugely important that realtors partner with y'all and try and find ways to find what that need is in that inside the market itself, inside the housing market, and try and achieve those end goals so we don't squander the resources that we've got on top of it. So
here's a great example. If there's a ranch in the hill country that's sold, I mean, that ranch, how much soil is on top of that rock? An inch or two? You know, even if the landscape company comes out and puts more soil or dirt down before they plant, is that really where you want turf grass? You know, is that the kind of water use that we want in that part of the territory? or any part of the territory, really. You know, those are the kind of things that we're trying to get people's minds to think, and people are there. There's a big part of our customer base that understands conservation. Those of us who were here in 2015, during that 2011-2015 drought, we saw the spring runs in Landon Park go dry. That's a no-joke situation. And so part of the demand on that water that caused it to go dry is landscape irrigation. So we just need to be real thoughtful about that.
Good deal. Does anybody else out there in Zoom land have any questions? No? Well, I don't want to hog all your time. We sure do appreciate you coming out. Like I said, we plan on putting this out there to the public, and we look forward to working with y'all and seeing what we can do from our side and try and keep our community rolling.
All right. Well, thank you all for having us and sitting here and listening to me talk all this time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.